They called him one of the most powerful men in the world. But behind the glitz, the gold-plated towers, and the roaring crowds lay a secret he kept buried, one so sinister it would terrify even his most loyal followers. What price had he really paid for his rise to fame and fortune? Donald Trump sat alone in his Mar-a-Lago study, the warm Florida breeze rustling the curtains. Yet despite the luxurious surroundings, he felt a cold unease creeping up his spine. It wasn't the lawsuits or the political attacks that kept him awake at night. No, it was something far darker, a shadow from his past that had begun to reappear. Years ago, before he was a household name, Donald had encountered a mysterious figure. It was a chance meeting at an old, crumbling mansion in upstate New York. The man, dressed in a black suit that seemed to absorb the light, had offered him a deal. Fame, fortune, and power beyond imagination, the man said with an unnerving smile, but everything has a cost. Donald, ambitious and eager to make a name for himself, laughed off the warning and shook the man's hand. From that moment on, his life skyrocketed: real estate empires, TV fame, and eventually the presidency. But over the years, small, inexplicable, things began to happen. First, his reflection in mirrors started acting off. It wasn't just his usual scowl staring back. Sometimes his reflection smiled when he wasn't smiling. Other times it seemed to whisper things he couldn't quite hear. Then there were the shadows. They followed him, even in brightly lit rooms. They were always just at the edge of his vision, shifting unnaturally, growing darker and more pronounced as the years went on. One night, after a particularly heated interview, Donald retreated to his study to unwind. As he poured himself a glass of Diet Coke, he noticed something strange, a letter resting on his desk. The paper was yellowed, and the handwriting was jagged and spidery. "Your time is almost up. Prepare to repay the debt." His heart raced. He dismissed it as a prank, but deep down he knew the truth. The man in black had returned to collect. That night his dreams were plagued by eerie visions. He saw himself standing in a vast, desolate wasteland, surrounded by towering, shadowy figures. They whispered in unison, their voices chilling. "You took what wasn't yours. Now it's time to give it back." The following evening, during a private dinner, the lights in the mansion flickered. The shadows on the walls began to move, stretching and twisting unnaturally. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness. When the lights returned, Donald found himself alone. The guests, the staff, everyone had vanished. He looked down at his hands and gasped. They were aging rapidly, wrinkling and withering before his eyes. His reflection in the glass doors revealed a horrifying sight. His face was no longer his own. It was the face of the man in black. "You wanted power." A deep voice boomed from the shadows. "Now you are the power, but it comes at a cost. You'll be forgotten, a shadow of yourself, bound to walk this earth, watching everything you built crumble to dust." Donald screamed, but no sound came out. The shadows enveloped him, pulling him into the darkness. The next day, the media reported that Donald Trump had vanished without a trace. Mar-a-Lago was abandoned, its halls eerily quiet. Some say they can still hear his voice echoing through the empty corridors, pleading for release. And late at night, if you stand outside the gates, you might see a shadowy figure staring out from the windows. His face is twisted in a silent scream, a prisoner of the power he once craved. But the most chilling part: every few years a letter arrives at the desk of another ambitious figure offering them the same deal, and the cycle begins again.